Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're zeroing in on something that is absolutely foundational, yet, it's deeply personal. We're looking at the building blocks of self-confidence. We're going to explore the core concepts from the Architects of Confidence module and really get into the blueprint for boosting your self-esteem. But before we get into the nuts and bolts of how it all works, let's just talk about why this matters so much. Self-esteem? It's not just some feel-good buzzword. It's literally the foundation of how we build our entire lives. Think about it. It dictates the boundaries of our careers, the health of our relationships, and even just the baseline of our everyday happiness. If that foundation has cracks in it, well, everything you build on top of it is going to feel pretty unstable. So, taking the time to truly wrap our heads around this blueprint, it's honestly one of the highest leverage things you can possibly do for your own personal growth.
So before we break down the mechanics of how confidence actually works, I want you to just pause for a second. What is your opinion of yourself? Like, really? Answer it honestly in your head right now. Take a moment to just feel out your gut reaction. For a lot of us, facing this question head on can be kind of uncomfortable, right? It might even bring up some surprising thoughts. We spend so much of our time evaluating other people, our jobs, everything going on around us that turning the lens inward can actually feel incredibly confronting. But it's a remarkably simple question, and your answer carries a massive amount of weight in how you navigate the world. Hold on to that initial gut reaction as we move through this.
Okay, let's dive into this. Act 1, the mirror, where we define what self-esteem actually is.
The module gives us this refreshingly straightforward definition. Self-esteem is, very simply, your opinion of yourself and your abilities. Now notice that specific word there, opinion. It's not a cold, hard, unchangeable fact. It's not some permanent clinical diagnosis handed down from on high. It is strictly an opinion you hold about what you bring to the table. And distinguishing between fact and opinion, that's where the real power is. Let's say you take a super difficult certification exam for your career and you fail. The fact is simply the failing grade on the paper. The opinion is the story you tell yourself afterward. Saying things like, I'm just not smart enough for this field, or I literally always mess things up. When we realize that self-esteem is essentially just an internal narrative, it kind of strips away all that clinical mystery. It transforms it from this permanent personality trait into a framework we can actually wrap our heads around, dissect, and ultimately change.
And because it is simply an opinion, it's not permanently fixed in stone. Which brings us to Act 2, the spectrum and the universality of doubt. You see, self-esteem doesn't exist as a simple binary. It's not black and white. You don't just boldly have it or completely lack it. Instead, it operates dynamically on a sliding scale. Your self-esteem can be high, it can be low, or, as is the case for most of us, depending on the day, the hour, even the situation, it can be somewhere right in the muddy middle. Just think about what that middle ground actually looks like in practice. You might be the person who feels highly competent and totally confident, presenting an aggressive strategy in a boardroom full of executives. But then, that exact same evening, you find your self-esteem totally plummeting to the floor while trying to navigate casual small talk as a social gathering. It naturally and constantly fluctuates across this entire spectrum, depending on context, how tired you are, and your environment.
Now, what's really interesting here, and honestly, there is immense validation in this, is understanding that everyone, and I mean absolutely everyone, occasionally has doubts about themselves. The source text explicitly emphasizes this. Self-doubt is a completely universal human experience. We fall into this trap, right? Assuming that highly successful people, CEOs, celebrated artists, visionary leaders, operate with this unbroken 100% confidence. But the reality is actually the complete opposite. Most high achievers battle severe bouts of imposter syndrome, those terrifying dips on the spectrum where they wonder if they're frauds just waiting to be found out. Even the most outwardly confident people you know experience deep hesitation. So you are entirely normal for feeling those dips. You aren't broken, you're just participating in the human condition.
But while occasional doubt is normal, getting stuck at the bottom of that scale is a completely different story. So let's look at Act 3, the weights, and examine the actual cost of low self-esteem. The crucial point here is how profoundly this affects our day-to-day functioning. According to the module, low self-esteem delivers a really difficult 1-2 punch. First, it leaves you feeling deeply insecure, constantly questioning your worth and your place in the room. And second, it leaves you feeling chronically unmotivated. It drains your internal security and completely kills your drive to take action, try new things, or push forward. Let's ground that in reality for a second. What does feeling unmotivated actually look like in practice? Well, it usually looks exactly like self-sabotage. It's deciding not to apply for that internal promotion because you've already assumed they aren't going to pick you anyway.
It's staying totally quiet during a crucial meeting because you feel like your idea just isn't good enough to share. It's skipping the gym or bailing on a social event because the sheer effort of putting yourself out there feels insurmountable. It's a genuinely heavy weight to carry around, and it actively shrinks the perimeter of your life.
Which naturally leads us to ask, where do these difficult feelings of insecurity and lack of motivation actually come from? Let's uncover that in our final section, Act 4, The Origin. The text presents two very different ways low self-esteem can take root. On one side, you've got identifiable causes. You might be able to pinpoint exactly what is negatively affecting your opinion of yourself. Maybe you're dealing with a toxic work environment, or recovering from being bullied, or perhaps you're just going through a really prolonged season of feeling intensely lonely. You can draw a direct, logical line from a negative life event straight to a dip in your confidence. But on the other side, and this brilliantly illustrates a deeply validating reality, sometimes it's just a complete mystery. And why is it a mystery? Well, human psychology is incredibly complex. A drop in self-esteem might be the invisible buildup of hundreds of tiny micro-events over several years. Or actually, scratch that. It could simply be a temporary chemical or hormonal fluctuation. Accepting that you might not know the exact cause is actually incredibly liberating. It frees you from this exhausting cycle of overanalyzing your past. It allows you to just say, hey, I don't know exactly why I feel so unmotivated today. And that's okay. So you can actually put your energy toward the cure rather than obsessing over the cause.
So let's pull the whole shebang together. We've established that self-esteem is simply an opinion. It's a changeable internal narrative, not some immovable fact. We've seen how it operates on a sliding scale, meaning that experiencing doubt and imposter syndrome is universally normal. And we've recognized those root causes, accepting that whether they're totally obvious or a complete mystery, simply acknowledging them is the absolute first step. Now that you're equipped with the foundational theory, it's time to put it to work. So I'll leave you with this. Are you ready to identify your personal blockers and proactively begin boosting your self-esteem? Because now that you truly understand the foundation of the blueprint, the real building can finally begin. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and keep building that confidence.